Hello grade 11s, we are going to do PAT and I'm going to walk you through all the processes involved. Now the scenario is a tournament. You have to write a program that's going to eventually crown the winner of a tournament, whether it's sports or games, or I'm going to use chess. So I'm going to work on a chess tournament where schools play chess against each other, and as you can see it says warning, do not copy. This is an example PAT, but we're going to start off, remember that we have to do phase 1, which I call phase 1. It is now separated into tasks, but you will see in my phase 1, which I like to call the documentation phase, I have provided a Word document for you. I'm opening it now, in which you have to complete this whole Word document, and it's very long. It takes a long time, and if you don't do this, about half of the marks of your PAT will be lost. So it's nearly 50% of the marks of your PAT are allocated with this document. So you read the descriptions of what's required, and then you do that, fill in on your own in the blocks required that what you have to put in, and in the sections underneath each green section. So the greens are the instructions, and then underneath you're going to type your answers for each green section, and you'll fill in the tables, etc. Now I'm going to only do the practical part of it, the programming part here in this series of videos. I'll step you through from the beginning. Now before we do anything else, we have to plan what our program is going to look like, and we have to start with a database. So we can open Access, you go to Start and you open Access. It's very important that you follow these steps exactly as I'm laying them out to you, otherwise you will have a problem later on. Well, you will have problems. Now what we want to do is create a blank database. So we click that button, and before we go and click create, I know there's a nice big button there to click, you don't click on it because this is the wrong format. ACCDB will connect with great difficulty to Delphi, so we're going to rather save a database in a different format. So we have to click on this browse for location first. We click on browse for location, this button there to the right. We don't even bother naming the database yet, and then you browse to your folder where you are going to put your, I'm going to put it in my desktop for now, but you must make sure you put it in a safe place. So you create a folder with your name and PAT phase 2. This is going to be your program, and then you open the folder, and over here the save as type, very important that you choose the right type. It's the first one, 2002-2003 format .mdb. Then you change the name. Don't just save your database as anything, change the name. I'm calling it chess matches. You can call it the database whatever, if it's cricket or any sport that you want, or any other clubs or societies that you want to create, and there's a competition involved, name your database according to that, and then we are fine to click OK. And only when you can see the right format there and the right name, then you click create, and now you have a blank database. Now databases will always have a table in them. You cannot have a database without a table. It has to have a table, and so a blank table will be appearing, but we're going to change that table name. Now I've decided to have 2 tables. Now how did I come about that? Let's go back to this. If we say schools are going to play games against each other, then it looks like we're going to store data about a school. So I'm going to call it the schools table or school table. But we must remember that there are players involved. So we have player as well. Because further on, we say each school is going to play another school. Okay, fine, we're going to have a school, we'll have a player. But what about the games? We also have games. Now I'm pulling out all the nouns of this scenario over here. We have school, okay, noun. These are all the nouns in my description. So I wrote a nice description here. Schools plays chess games against each other. So school is a noun, fine. Games is a noun. I don't have to worry about the word chess. It's an adjective, but we know the chess is the name of my database. It's the name of my program. It's going to be a chess competition thing. So where else does these two nouns exist? Okay, a school play another school. So we've got that noun, 6 schools. And I've got, this is just extra info, which I might include in my program. The total number of matches that will be played. Then we say a school has teams. So we have another word called teams. We have a team. And there's going to be 2 teams, team A and B. Okay, team A, and I'm just making my rough notes over here. Now the members are actually the players. So I should change that word to players, not so. Because player is another name. A player of chess. And they are given numbers based on their skills. So that one, a number, is a description of a player. So now we know that a player will have a player number. We know they will have a name. What else will they have? An ID or a grade or an age. We can just keep it to age maybe, not worry about grade. And even age is, in the game of chess, age doesn't matter. And maybe we could, just for reference, what grade they're in or class, so that we can look them up and on the school's list, so we can say, okay, this person in that class 1. But even that is probably not important. So try and limit the data that you need about things. So right, so when we think about all the others, I've got player here already, haven't I? Anyway, so I've got player. Team A. So we want to know which team they belong in, don't we? So now team is no longer a noun, it's more like a descriptive word. So we'll get that out, team. We also want to know what school they belong to. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? So I can get rid of school over here. So what I've got left, game, player number, the child's name or the person's name, the class and the team that they're in, the school that they're in. So these are all going to be describing a player. What describes a game? Well, we could have the date of the game. We could have where it is, place. We could have the winner of that game. We could have the player number, player that played, player 1, player 2. Because we know that chess involves one player playing against another player. So for each game, we can find who the winner is when we record it. We record it in our data. Remember that the database tables are for recording data about things. And the things are basically the nouns that are in your scenario. So where was my game? We had schools and we had player. We're deciding, because school is part of describing a player, that we won't make school as one of the tables. I'm deciding, because I want the school will be part of describing the player, because players are going to play each other. So I'm deciding to make school as a description of an actual player, so which school they belong to. So this is to try and get my tables to be nice and streamlined. So we have details about the player, and these are all valid. Every single one of those are valid. And details about the game, so far that is valid. We have a date, a place, a winner, player 1, player 2. What else shall we have? The place with the venue. In other words, a better word for that would be venue, wouldn't it? Venue. Venue, and the player, the first one player and the second player, and then we can have a winner, in other words, for that game. And what about another thing called, what if there's a draw between the two? I don't know if chess actually does have a draw or stalemate or whatever we can call it. I'll call it draw, basically. So if nobody wins, you know what I mean? So there we go. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I'm sure you chess people will let me know. Right, so what I've got, I've broken it down to 2 tables. Now the thing with these tables, they have to be in relationship to each other. You cannot have a database without 2 tables. In your PAT you have to have 2 tables, and you must have a relationship between the 2 tables. How are we going to relate games with players? Well, we're going to think about our story. We're going to say players are going to play many games, aren't they? Players are definitely going to play many games. And each game is on a different date in a different venue, and probably at a different time, because we can also put time in there. So I'm happy with saying that one player is going to play many games, and one game is going to be played only by one player, because when you think about it, they play a game at 9 o'clock, and then at maybe 11 o'clock they'll play another game. But normally when we have tournaments, each player only plays one game at a tournament, and there's going to be 7 players, so we have plenty to choose from. And there's teams A and B's, so there's 14 players in total in each team. So a player is only going to play many games at different dates, and one game is going to be only played by one player. So remember that there'll be a game on the 2nd of August maybe, and then a player will play in that game. A whole lot of players will play in that game, but they're not going to play more than one game on a day. So therefore, one game will have many players, because there will be like 14 players in each school, and one player will only play one game on that game date. So this is what I've come up with, and I'm going to create my database for that now. I want to create 2 tables. Normally tables are the nouns in your scenario, like I pulled out all those nouns: school, game, player. But when you see another noun like school, and you realize, okay, but school can be part of the description of a player, then you can make another school table, but you don't have to. We can just put the school name in the player table. So I'm going to go and create my table now. Now, in order to create a table, I'm in Access. I'm going to look at my diagram, my scenario there. I'm going to go and right click on this table and say Design View. Another way to do it would be to go to the Home tab and go to View, Design View. So you can do it that way also, or you can just right click and say Design. You see these are tables over here, and if you don't see anything there, click your drop down arrow, as you can see. So I'm going to right click on table, go to Design View. Now remember, I wanted to have one of the tables must be game, so let's type the word game and click OK. Now I like to use singular words for my table names. Another word for a table is an entity, a noun, entity. Anyway, click OK. And then we get into design view. Now you have to have a primary key. See this little key over here? There's a little key thing. Your primary key is your field or column. These are fields. They're all horizontal now, but they're normally vertical when you see it in datasheet view. But this key, you must have a primary key. Now, game ID and auto number is the best, easiest primary key to use for your PAT. So remember to do that. Then, what else are we going to have about the game? We'll have the game date. Don't use the word date. Take note, I'm using all small letters because it's easier to type, and yes, you can. You can use small letters. You're not going to get penalized for that. So game date is obviously one of the first descriptions, but we have to go to our data type here and then use date and time. Be careful now with date and time. In date and time, we're going to go to the format over here, click the drop down arrow and choose short date. Then we're going to go to the input mask, click the drop down arrow and choose. It says, oh, you must save table first. Yes, okay, fine, I'm saving it. Then we choose short date again and then click next. And just click next and finish, and don't worry about it ever again. Right, so we've got game date. What is the next field that I want to put in? Venue. Now venue is a safe word for access. What does that mean, safe word? There's a lot of words like date and name that access really has a problem, and you will have a problem actually using it in your database, and then you'll wonder why it's not working. Make full descriptive names or things that are typically non-reserved words for your field names or column names. So anyway, short text is fine, but you have to change the field size at the bottom here. So a venue, do you think it would be 50 characters or 70? Just so long as it's not 255. Remember that we are allocating space in the hard drive because our database is stored on the hard drive or on your flash drive, wherever, but it takes up space, so you use less numbers there in the field size, characters in other words. That's the number of characters that we would use, and you're giving a limit there. 255 is a little bit too much. Right, now we want to know who the winner is and who the player ID is and who what the draw is, whether the game is a draw. So I'm going to use the word, you can either use stalemate or draw or whatever. I'm just using a draw, and this is going to be a true and false field, yes or no. So we choose a yes or no field, so it'll be ticked if it was a draw. Now the other fields are who's the player 1 and who's player 2. Player 1 and player 2. Those words, the numbers don't really mean anything, but we're going to have to use the player ID from the player table to fill these fields in. So I'm not going to use them yet, and I'll explain to you why later. And even the winner we can use from the player ID. So winner, player 1 and player 2. Remember, we want to record the players and who's drawing. We have to have a record of that in our database, in our table, sorry, in this game table, because remember I included it here. Who the player was for playing a game, player 1, player 2, and draw. Actually, it's not player 1, player 2, is it? Well, it is going to be player 1, player 2. The player name of player 1 and the player name of player 2. Now we will have many games played on the same date, obviously, because there are going to be 7 games played in total. Say they are, okay, because remember we had 7 players each playing against each other. So I'm going to close this now. I'm not going to finish this yet. We're going to come back to this table, but you close it and you say yes to save changes. And now we're going to make another table for our player. Now this one's going to be easier, because we don't have to wait before we go and add anything to it. So I'm going to go to the create and table. So you go to create and table, and then you'll see it looks similar, and we're going to now go into design view. So you can go to home and view design view, or you can right click on it on the table one there. Now we want to call it another name, so I'm calling this player. I'm using singular words because that is the format traditionally in databases. So I'm going to choose player ID, just like I did with the game. Can you see that primary key there? That's my primary key, and it's going to be an auto number. It'll automatically make a new number for every row. So that makes sure that every single row in your database is unique, and you don't have to worry about it after that. So now we want the player name. Don't use the word name. You put player name, and over here it says short text. That's fine, and we will choose. Suppose you could have a long name. Let's make it 80. Then I will put in are we going to worry about the age? No, we weren't. We were going to worry about, so player number is the primary key. Then we have the person name. We were maybe going to worry about, let's just worry about the team and the school. And that's the main thing. So we're going to call it team, school first, school name, and that can be 50 characters. So remember, I click on there, and then I go down to the field size, and then team. Now team will either be A or B in my case. It all depends on what you want. So I'm going to change field size to 1 character. So team is only going to be 1 character, and the database will complain bitterly if you make it more than 1 character. So far we're not worrying about age and grade. We will worry about the name, the school, and the team. So that's all we have to do, and then we close this window. So that's everything. I've decided you can put the class in if you want, or the age, but I'm just not going to worry about that now. So it's not absolutely necessary. Think of your scenario, and I'm thinking of mine, because I know that in chess it doesn't matter what grade or age you are. Right, I'm closing this table now. It says yes to save changes. Now we've got 2 tables here. Okay, I used one with a capital letter and one without. I'm going to get rid of this capital letter here. Keep small letters, because you'll find when you're doing the actual programming that it helps with typing. So now we have to go to our relationship diagram, because we have to describe this, just to show you what this will look like. I'll go to Database Tools, Relationships, and over here you will see Add Table. So this is just a display of your table. So I'm going to add that table, and then I'll add this table. So you can see they come up here nicely. Now we can go and look at our story. Remember the one-to-many relationship I told you about earlier? We have to have 1 table in a many, 2 tables in a relationship. So we're going to create a one-to-many relationship. Remember I told you that 1 game is going to be played only by, well, actually, 1 game is going to be played by many learners. Not so. But 1 player is only going to play 1 game. So 1 player will play 1 game, and 1 game will be played by many learners. Now the thing is, we have to know who's playing the game and when. So that's going to be a bit of a problem, isn't it? Well, if 1 game is going to have many learners playing it, but 1 player will only play 1 game, then this is the many side. This is the many side. So we're going to make it like that. When your story says 1 game is going to be played by many players, so on that date you'll have many players playing, and then one player will only play one game. This game ID is going to be per date. There's going to be a date and a venue. Each game is going, if you think of this table here, if we try and fill in the data here in the table, let's say game date 2nd of August, sorry, 2nd of 8, no, I think it's the other way around. It's got a year, month, day. Oh, it's year, month, day. 20220802, yeah. And then you'll have another game 20020814, and then of course maybe you'll have a venue here saying VP, and then maybe this venue will be PHS, and then you'll decide whether we're going to draw or not, whether it was a draw. Well, the thing is here, where are we going to link the players with the game? So we have to think very carefully about that one. So we know, well, the players are going to play many games and many, but actually they're only going to play one game per players are going to play many games, and one game will be played by one player at a time. Even though there's going to be like 7 players, a player is only going to play one game at a time. So the game on this date, when we look at our table here, the game table, we need to add more details here. Player, which player is going to play, and so on. So if it would be the other way around, and say we said one plays many games. If we say one game is played by many players, then we'll have a game ID there over here on the many side, because what happens is if you have a one-to-many relationship, you have to put a foreign key on the many side. So if this was the many side player, then we have to borrow game ID and put it over here. Now, whichever one makes more sense, we will think about that, and I will come back to you in the next episode.